Well, hey everybody, Wes McDonald here from GoWest.ai, and you'll notice that I'm by myself today. Randy Dazo, my co-host, is actually in Japan doing some business there. So, Randy, hopefully things are awesome in Japan. And one of the things that we do like to ask is where you're watching from. And if Randy is watching from Japan, good to see you. And I myself am joining in from Canada. In just a very few moments, I'm going to bring in a guest who is somewhere else. So. Make sure you let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to see where people are coming in from. We've had a global audience for this live stream so far. We've had people in from the UK, from Australia, from other parts of Europe, Saudi Arabia, and obviously Canada, like where I'm from. And if you have any comments or questions throughout the live stream, we'd love to hear them, especially as we're talking about something as new as AI that you may have some questions both for myself and for the guests that we have in the program. So make sure that you ask those. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in our guest for this week's show, Mr. Tom Cooper at OEM Connect. How are you, Tom?
Doing good, Wes. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. I really, really appreciate you coming on the show. And for guests that maybe haven't met you before, maybe just do a brief introduction. And then I'd like to talk a little bit about OEM Connect as well.
Sure. Yeah, Tom Cooper. I'm the CEO and president of OEM Connect. Been in charge of the company now for a little over three years. We're an office supply company, as Wes is showing. We specialize in buying surplus copier supplies, ink and toner mainly, and then we resell it for a lot lower than many other outlets you can find it. We're also starting to get into a little bit of IT asset purchasing as well. So we're basically one man's trash is another man's treasure. That's what we do.
I love it. And you know that the old MPS specialist in me, right? That one of the things that I did as an MPS specialist was try to make sure that people were using devices for the, full length of their, lifespan, right? And that was, people are always surprised at how much, life their equipment and stuff had in them. But of course, if they're stuck on a contract, which is up for renewal or to get new stuff, then you've just got so much of that surplus which didn't do anything, right? And I can remember taking pictures of toner closets on a regular basis and showcasing the amount of toner that they had, which was not useful anymore, right? And it was heartbreaking because they'd look at it and be like, yeah, I know, we got rid of that device 3 years ago, right?
Yep.
So,
that's how it happens.
Yours. And there's got to be a pretty strong environmental, factor there too. So the stuff's not just being, thrown out, that people are actually making sure, because it is new, toner and stuff that you're collecting and reselling as well, right?
Yeah, that's correct. It's things that left over for when people change out their machines, and they might stick them in a supply closet, like you said, just kind of hoping that one day they'll use them, or who knows, maybe it's a recycler that is getting back stuff from people that it's just a mixed load of might be new and used, and then we have them kind of separated. So yeah, it's just like I said, one man's trash is another man's treasure, and then we keep it out of the landfill, and we also would resell it for a pretty good bargain.
Yeah, and it's interesting actually, because until I actually started working with you, I didn't really understand the whole process of the fact that when you're quote unquote selling, that you're also buying, right? That the buying part is such an important piece of trying to make sure that you get the word out there, that you're available to to take that product, and just absolutely fascinating. And you mentioned that you're moving into, and I love talking about diversification, that you're
Yep.
moving IT assets as well. So what's that going to look like?
Yeah, same type of deal. People that are doing refreshes on their laptops and servers and monitors and things of that nature. We would provide an outlet to get value for that stuff rather than sending it to a recycler, or God forbid it gets thrown away somewhere. We would help to do the data wiping and make sure that all the personal information was clear and fully up to we have certifications in the works. And going to do the same thing that we do with toner, just keep finding homes for products that you may no longer need, and then on the back end turning around and selling it to people that do need it for a lot cheaper than they can find it elsewhere.
Yeah, and I got to think too, right? Because I do work with some not-for-profits and stuff as well, and that's it's got to be something that they'd be looking at, right? As they're looking to sort of refresh some of their things as well, without having to buy new. And I do it myself. I mean, that's one of my favorite things is to find something that has been refurbished. So if it's like my smartwatch, for example, which I
Yep.
did get refurbished, right? Instantly out of the gate, it was a $500 smartwatch, and I saved $200 on it because it was freshly, refurbished, right? So, yeah, an amazing
Yes.
piece of the business. And just to let you know, looks like we got Nancy joining in from Massachusetts. Thank you very much, Nancy, for joining in. And also, Mr. Greg Walters is joining us from Michigan. And Greg, great to see you as always. And look at that, we got a fellow Canuck, and it's Mike Lamoth in Ontario, Canada. So good to see you, Mr. Lamoth. He's also a partner of mine in another business venture, Algoraic, which is something we'll probably talk about in the beginning of the new year. So good to see everybody there. All right, I want to talk a little bit about the news of your game, Tom. That and we've been obviously talking through some of this. We'll get to it a little bit later. But this whole idea of AI agents, right, where they're doing work. So instead of just writing, a good bit of writing for marketing or for sales, to be able to get these AI agents to do things, right? That once they're trained to autonomously kind of act on their own, right? And this was a surprising one for me. I'm a big Asana user for my task management, and I was not aware that they were moving in this direction. But what a great place for it, right? Because whenever you're doing projects or task management or other things, it's still a laborious and sort of manual process, right? So I'm excited to give this a whirl. So for anyone else out there that's using Asana, for project management or for task management, that they do have already some AI agents which are apparently ready. And I throw a cautionary apparently ready out there because I will give it a test run, as I always do, to see kind of where it's where it's at, right? And one of the reasons I do that, and I love Microsoft, they do have their own AI agents coming soon, and I'm happy that they're announcing in the blog that they put out 2 days ago, right, that they are moving through a sort of a beta phase for this, that it's not product ready yet with Copilot, because I think one of the mistakes a lot of the AI companies made early on, especially the bigger ones, which is kind of strange, right, that they pre-announced some things that really weren't ready for for market. I think that scared a lot of people kind of off. So really kind of excited about that. And for those that are out there using Microsoft products, I can't remember if this is phase 2 or phase 3 of what they're doing with Copilot. I did see that they will be billing separately for it, right? So there will be an additional charge if you're going to start using these agents in your workflow. And speaking of workflows, the next thing I'd like to talk about, this is kind of a critical thing, I think, for people as they start to look at AI, and there's just so much confusion about it out there. One of the first things that I've always talked about is you've got to kind of understand where the holes are in your own workflow first, right? And this is not rocket science. I mean, we've done kind of 360 assessments or looking at departmental workflows for years. It's only now we've got these AI tools which can potentially help with different workflows, right? And one of the things, Tom, you did move through an assessment
Yep.
with GoWest.ai. And so, and let me start with this. Why did you decide to look at AI in the first place? And then what were some of the insights that you sort of garnered through the assessment?
Well, like anybody else, AI has kind of, been in the news, and people are utilizing it in a lot of their day-to-day, workflow functions. And I just felt that it was prudent to at least, being not an AI guy, to try to learn about it and see where, if anywhere, inside of our business we could apply it. And so that's why I kind of went through that assessment, and I'm really glad I did, because not only does it force you to kind of look at your workflows like you talk about and see where the holes are, but you don't know what you don't know, and it turned out that there are some things that we can use AI for that is going to help us out. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, just like anyone else, just hearing about it and knowing other people that have utilized it in their business, I said, well, we gotta take a look.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because I think one of the things that you get out of this too, right, is that even the workflows where AI is not going to apply, you get a good lens on
Mhm.
where some of those things could help, right? I was working with another account actually, and one of the things that they were trying to do. There was not an AI solution for it, but there was a pre-built solution in the marketplace to do exactly what they were looking for, which they had no idea about, right? So, just to be able to look at that and find some, additional options, I, think is, useful as well, right? And when you went through the assessment process, were any, sort of highlights that came to mind, anything that sort of struck you as, sort of the, the low hanging fruit or the top contenders?
Yeah, we'll get into the major project that kind of working on right now with the CRM, but that was really the number one thing because we have such a like a lot of people, we rely so heavily on our CRM and it being updated accurately by the reps, and we're a little bit unique in our outbound efforts because we don't have manufacturer relationships or preset orders that we have to go fill. We kind of have to survive by going out to find stuff. So we're very, very heavy in our outbound. Our reps, make anywhere from 300 to 500, outbound cold calls per day per rep, and we have five reps on the team. So you can imagine the type of data that we ask them to manage and input on a day-to-day basis, and that's just the half of it. I mean, the managers and myself included, also we listen to recorded calls like a lot of people do to try to give, constructive feedback and have our reps be better at their job day to day. And that's a major undertaking on its own. So, one of the things we found out was, through our dialer, system, our parallel dialer that we use, and even our just regular soft phone for manuals, you can not only have those recorded and listened to by an AI, but your CRM can feasibly be updated in any number of custom fields that you have. Like we use HubSpot, and we have probably 15 to 20 different custom fields that we need to manage. The notes that they have to manually bring in, you can automate that where the AI will bring the notes in there. And then we use tasks for anyone that's familiar with HubSpot, both to do and call tasks, and we rely heavily on those. So just creating those and updating them and deleting or completing finished ones is, it's a really labor intensive job. And then you add in the layer of, okay, are the reps saying the right things? Are they overcoming objections, how they should? And when you put all that together, AI can really help, and that's what we're going down the road. So that was the thing that really stuck out. Of course, there was other things, learning about custom GPTs, when it comes to training employees, or even just having, a company handbook on there that they can go and interact with if they have questions. We have a quoting, module that we're playing around with where, we get quotes sent to us in any number of different ways. It might come
Yeah.
in a PDF. It might come through just the regular body of the email. It might be a picture that someone snapped on a handwritten notebook that, they then send as an attachment. And we need to, format those things in such a way that we can use our system to, tell us whether it was something that we want to buy, and, what do we want to buy it at. So, the capabilities of AI to format dirty, pieces of data
Yeah.
is another thing that really, popped out to us.
Yeah, it's exciting, and I want to talk about the one thing you said with the CRM stuff too, which we'll jump into in a bit here. But this idea of transcripts, right? That forever we've had the capability through Zoom calls or whatever
Mhm.
to record a meeting and then generally keep the transcript, and then they go to a place to die, right?
Yeah.
So we have that transcript, and it doesn't do anything. However, with AI, because it's looking at it and I will say intelligently, and I know I'm going to get in trouble for that, but it's looking at it intelligently to try and figure out what the high notes are, right? Like what the main things are to be able to summarize that. And to your point, to be able to take actions. And maybe that's actually a good segue. So let's actually start with what you're doing with that. So with HubSpot, with the CRM project, right? We're starting to enter this age, as we saw in the news, of agentic AI, right? And
Mhm.
I want to describe for our viewers and our listeners what agentic AI is versus kind of regular. I can't believe I say regular generative AI because it's still so new, right? But essentially, agentic AI has the capability of taking actions, and this is one of the things that is truly, I guess, kind of the next evolution of getting real work done with AI, right? So that sort of level one is to be able to train it to do a certain job function. and to move things through. Level 2, which we'll get to probably, I don't know, I'm going to pontificate here and say not for probably the next 6 months, to effectively be able to start not only doing things that it's trained to do within a certain job function, moving between different applications, taking those transcripts, reading them, working through the CRM, but actually thinking and doing things on its own, such as sending, Tom a note saying, "Hey, Tom, I just noticed that XYZ happened. That's unusual. Did you want to look into that further?" Right.
Yeah.
So that'll be, coming soon for those that are watching. Very different from just directing generative AI. We're using it to generate images. We're using it to write a better email or a blog, kind of et cetera, that it's actually doing things in the workflow. And I think one of the things that really excites me about this, I'm actually going to pull up, a screen here, if you're okay with that, with enhanced AI, just to show kind of what that looks like.
Sure.
And this is one of the partners that we're working with on this project. So Brad, if you're out there, hello, and team. And this is really cool. I'm just going to bring up a screenshot of kind of how this works, right? And essentially what we're doing is we're building these workflows on this tabletop. And if you can see with the resolution, I'm not sure, that it actually is joining functions and, different ways to actually move between applications and jobs. So the different color coded boxes have different, actions that they're going to take using AI as it moves through the system. And I think one of the things that's really cool is that, traditionally, if we would have to do like, API development to kind of move through these applications, that the AI allows us to actually, do that right here within one tool. And I remember, Tom, we were speaking with Brad, one of the things he said that, AI is good at different things, right? Like, if you're using Claude or if you're using ChatGPT or if you're using Gemini, right? And that you can actually create a job specific to that particular large language model when it's going through the, the workflow, right? So this is literally, this is the, the cutting edge stuff. I've been working with this organization now for probably about 6 months. And to see now all of the news that's coming out for, some of the others like Salesforce and Microsoft and some of the larger players that are, starting to do this, right? And, if I had a Christmas wish list for, what I could use this for in my own life, it would probably definitely be for task management and project management, right? To be able to have, somebody, an assistant that'll actually, kind of work with us to move through that. And today, that's a physical human being. Her name is Leslie Stratford. And I'm sure that she would like some more of that, agentic power in there as well, right? All right. So that's some of the cool stuff. And I think it is, for everyone out there watching, that this literally is kind of cutting edge, right? That, and I think it's fair to say, Tom, that when we looked at this, it is one of the more major projects of some of the ones that we looked at through the assessment, right? One of the smaller ones, and this is what's kind of cool, is that within the tool sets, ChatGPT, for example, one of the reasons I love this is that for the amount of money that they charge, per month for the team version, and that's something I want to throw out there, Tom, because we had that conversation right about using the team version, which OEM Connect is now on.
Yep.
To be able to obviously protect your intellectual property, to make sure that anything that you do in the workspace is, private to your organization, right? Greg says this is really good stuff, looking at the agentic AI, and I completely agree, Greg. And as a reminder for anyone else that's joining in late, we'd love to know where you're watching from. So share that if you're just joining in, and any comments and questions like Greg just left, feel free to get those out to us, right? Yeah, so working on these custom GPTs, and there's, a couple of ways to do it. One is right within ChatGPT, building the custom GPTs. And as you mentioned, Tom, as a repository for things that people may have to access on a regular basis, right?
Yes.
And I don't know if you remember the term that they use for it. I think it's kind of silly. We make up a new acronym every time, something changes, right? But it's called RAG, or Retrieval Augmented Generation. And what it really means is we're gonna build an area for a bunch of stored documentation, and the AI is going to access that for answers. So it's really quite simple compared to how they try and make it sound, right? And so that's one power. The other power, obviously, is what they're doing with computer vision. And this is really kind of blowing me away with how advanced it's actually getting at understanding what is in an image. And in the case of what we're trying to do, looking at being able to clean up some of those photographs of, lists of quantities and the part numbers that they think they have, kind of et cetera, right? Which is really cool. I mean, some of the testing that we've done, when I've actually seen some of the stuff come through, it's amazing, right? Like to think that it can actually do that. And there are limitations, as we discovered as well, right? So maybe we can talk about that for a moment. And I think that when you're looking at doing any custom GPT work, right, that the job of GPT, that it does like to have a pretty simple understanding of what it has to
Yeah.
do. And we've been working at it, trying to get it to do maybe 2 or 3 things at once. And sometimes it does a good job, and then other times it doesn't, right? So that has been a bit of a struggle moving through that, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I think a lot of people, maybe myself included, who don't, not AI people, you kind of have this, you know, this picture in your mind of like, okay, I'm going to tell it to do exactly what I want to do. It might be a complicated thing, and it's going to do it, right? Because AI has taken over the world, and there's going to be robots that are going to take all of our jobs and everything. And it's like this is going to happen. But when you actually start working on it and you see like kind of under the hood and how you have to train it and how it interprets, your directions, and then what it actually spits out, you kind of realize that it's a great tool, but there definitely is quite a lot of limitations. And one thing I've noticed is that you maybe have to train it a while, right? So even though you might have certain directions for it to do something, it may remember it one time, but then another time it might not, and you have to say, hey, remember direction number 2, or hey, remember direction number 3. And especially if you have a table in the background, which is kind of how you have to train these things. If you're
Yeah.
using Excel, like with this project that we're using, it's not very good at understanding, Excel. If there's a big data table, say for a description of a part number that might have 5 different machines and,
Right.
different color toners in our case, or the yield or whatever, it doesn't know what to look for within that column. It just knows that there is something in that column that it might need to find. And it's like I said, it's you have this vision in your mind of like, well, it's AI, it's going to figure it out, but it's not always that easy.
No, it does need instructions, and that's part of it. I work with other clients as well, where we actually train GPTs to do writing for them, right? Because they get frustrated that out of the box, ChatGPT, if you try and write with it, it does sound like ChatGPT, right?
Hmm.
And that you do have to train it to be able to write in a certain tone and voice. And as I discovered in one, when we taught it to actually write articles in the voice of whoever it is, right? And Ian, if you're out there, I know that we've got you coming up for an interview, I think in a couple of weeks. One of the projects we've been working on, with him and one of his clients is kind of that, that AI voice tone. And what we learned was that if we were teaching it to do articles, it was great at it once we figured that out. But if we tried to complicate it and say, well, sometimes you're going to do an article, and then other times you're going to do a LinkedIn post, and then other times you're going to do this other thing, that's where it starts to get a little, confused, right? And this experimentation that we have to do right now, and in kind of as we're working through AI to make it do what we want, right? Yeah, so that's certainly some of the the struggles that we have with that, and really learning what it's capable of. Because I don't know about you, Tom, but there's no handbook out there for here's the way that you can use it or do it right. That they're
No.
really relying on us to kind of help them define what it's capable of as well.
Oh
And
yeah.
and I think companies like OpenAI and companies like Microsoft who are using their stuff as a background, you remember this in the past, they don't even know how everything works, right? They know that it works, but they don't necessarily understand what's in the black box and exactly how it's working, right? So absolutely, fascinating. Yeah, so in respect for your time, one of the things I'd like to move in, because from your experience, you've obviously had some good experiences and also seen some limitations and
Yep.
struggles. What about advice for dealers out there? And this is something that I have seen, particularly in the office equipment channel, where there's a real reticence to kind of reach out and explore some of these uses for AI. I actually just wrote an article which will be coming out in another publication for the office products world, which talks about kind of the 3 fundamentals. And you and I obviously have talked about this in our relationship, right? That look, even if you're not going to go hog wild with AI, the first thing you have to do is make sure you have a team version So you're protecting your, information, right? You've got to have some AI policies and guidelines developed so people know how they're, allowed to use it. And then the third one I call is the holy trifecta is make sure you're using AI for note taking. So instead of those transcripts to going to die a grisly death and, in transcript hell, that they can actually be useful, that you can get summaries and update them in, in your tasks, such as you are with the CRM,
Yep.
the project that we're working on, and me, myself, just simple updates in the CRM as well as my task management in the Asana, right? Just absolutely, I don't know how I lived without it before, right? So even just those three things, I would say for people, to make sure that they get out and do, and they're not, right? Like there's still a lot of hesitance out there for people to take that move. So you're obviously very process driven and progressive, but what other advice do you have for those that are sitting on the AI fence?
Well, I would say that, I would advise to jump in because, AI is coming whether you like it or not, and pick one or two things to focus on. And if something doesn't work out, exactly how you envision, then I wouldn't say, okay, well, AI doesn't work, and we're going to do things how we used to do, and then move on. Because, if we had looked at our quoting module first with all of the, the issues and the struggles with the power limitations and everything, and we said, you know what, this is not ready, we'll revisit it in a year or two, whatever, then we would have missed out on the CRM project, which really
Right.
is really showing, promising return on investment. So that's what I would say is that, jump in, but don't be discouraged. I think the work that goes into it on your end, people might not be prepared for. A lot of people think, okay, if I hire an AI firm and or some consultants, right, we're going to tell them what I want to do. I'm going to sit back and it's going to be done.
No.
And that's not how it works. You have to train at everything that you really want to do, and there's idiosyncrasies to every little bit of process, and I bet you most people don't have them all documented already, because it's really, really hard to document every tiny little thing that could go wrong in a certain workflow, especially when you're talking about sales pitches and grading reps, and what are they updating in the CRM, and how do you even know when to update those things, right? Like, what type of call is it that you're listening to? Is it a discovery call? Is it a net new? If it's a net new, is it from any number of different verticals that you work with, which all have different objections to overcome, right? So it's like, you really have to be dedicated to the process if you're gonna see success in AI.
Right.
And then I would say, even when you do that, if it doesn't work exactly how you think, at least my opinion is just to not give up on it, because it doesn't work how you think it is. If that was
No.
the attitude that you took, then nothing would ever be progressed.
No, we would never move forward, right? And I love one of the things that you say there, though, about one project being able to look into another project, which you may not have had eyes open to if you hadn't done that, right? And that's one of the things I love about working at the workflows first, because we have a list of things that are potentials that we move through, right? The other thing is with this experimentation, and I can remember I was part of sort of the managed print services space when it was born, right? And my job when I got into the channel, I was actually working for Printfleet and as a sales rep. And when I showed up, they still didn't have any software. They had a whiteboard that had some things joined together, and here's what it's going to do, and we're going to monitor all these devices, but it didn't exist yet,
Yeah.
right? And it was that I can remember starting that job because when we first got the software developed, and getting those people on board to actually start selling MPS and to start using tools like a DCA to start monitoring devices, people were terrified, right? But I can tell you one thing, that those that jumped on to managed print services early are the ones that made the lion's share of the revenues coming out of adding that to their business scope. And I would certainly encourage, I guess that'd be my advice for people sitting in the AI fence is, we've already been talking about things that, like agentic AI and working through a system like enhanced AI, and others. That's more advanced, and it's going to continue to do that. And I would say that if somebody was to try and look at AI saying, well, we'll just give it a year and have a look at it in a year, you're going to have so much learning to do, right? It's just to be able to understand the capabilities and the restrictions and those eureka moments, I think, is the other one, right? That I know that one of the things that I've experienced through this is when a client sends me an email, and I'm sure you're going to do it too, Tom. You're like, oh my God, I just had this thought about this. Could we use AI on this, right? That your brain's starting to, to work in that way.
Oh yeah, and having the context where now you maybe because you tried to build something or had built something on another project, now you have a much better frame of reference for how you need to attack the new one.
Absolutely, right? And so once again, what I do want to bring up before we get out here today, I just really encourage people to make sure, just let me pull it up here, to check out OEM Connect. So if you are looking for supplies, they have an absolutely unbelievable inventory for you to be able to choose from. Why pay full price when you can actually get them at a discount for new toner that somebody else never got around to using, right? So make sure that you check out their site, oemconnect.com. And I can tell you firsthand that the group there will treat you well. Everyone that I've worked with at the organization, from Tom and Rick to others, are just some of the best people that you're ever going to have the chance to work with. They really treat their customers and their partners like they matter. So, Tom, I can't wait to be able to follow up with you in another 6 months. We'll get you back on. We've already talked about that. Maybe have
Yep, sounds
another
like a plan.
session coming up in the new year. And thank you so much for joining in today.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me on, and thank you for the kind words.
Yeah. And I'm just going to give a little plug here. So Marco Jack, Secta Labs, November 7th. And we preambled on this a little bit before we started on the call, looking at some of the stuff that they do, right? One of the things on LinkedIn, I don't think anyone should have a bad picture on LinkedIn anymore, right? Because some of these services, Secta Labs, I think is one of the best. And just as a side note, I'm not sure if you watched that episode, Tom, but my co-host Randy had actually used some inferior AI engine to get his headshots done, and everyone commented on that saying, "Nice AI headshot." And then I said that you gotta try something better. And he went to Secta Labs and got them done. That Nancy's in the organization, the marketing team, everyone was just like, "Oh, you're just so much better, right?" And so this really is crazy. We were talking about it earlier that I just got my fall collection done, and I was laughing because it said that it's too good, right? That it has my belly, my beer belly, it has everything. A little too close to reality, right? Too many wrinkles for my liking. But as Marco, has said when I've talked to him in the past, AI's job isn't to make you look Hollywood; it's to make you look 10% better, right? That's got to be how it's got to be trained, is to make sure that it's actually still you when you create these images. So I think you can see from the pictures that they're absolutely awesome. So I can't wait in 2 weeks to be able to speak with Marco Jack. And Tom, thanks once again for joining today, and for being a bold pioneer in the AI space. And to everyone that's joined us today, if you're watching or listening, if you're watching on LinkedIn or on YouTube or listening to us on our podcast, thank you for joining, and thank you for being progressively minded as well as we move into the future together. And as I always say, my tagline at the end of these, Tom, is until next time, keep learning.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Wes.
All right. Cheers, everybody.